seeable when you look at the pictures that are on Instagram or at the magazines that we have been published in. So when talking about the project of Monte, I also have to mention that it's a project that we have done in the first office that I founded together with Tiziano Schürch, that is called Studio Ser, and it has since greatly informed what I do now in the new office called Ofreia, so Office for Revealing Encounters in Architecture. I would like to give you quickly an overview of where we are at. You see here an aerial view of Switzerland here, and then the upper part of Italy. And as you can see, the white dot is where Monte is located. It's really a transition phase between the quite harsh reality of the Alps, so that also shows in a quite extreme topography, slowly melting down towards the Po plain. And Monte is really at this threshold between the mountain region and the very flat region, and where it's getting slowly a bit softer. As you know, or maybe some of you know, Switzerland is divided in 4 language parts. We have a Swiss-German part, we have a Swiss-French part, we have a Romansh part, very minority, and we have an Italian part. And the Italian part is concentrated mostly in Ticino, that we see on the left. It's like a triangle that does something like this, that goes up from a very alpine region at the top, slowly going down towards Como and then Milano. Como and Milano obviously are not in Switzerland anymore. And Monte finds itself in a reality that is at the very southern tip of Ticino, so almost at the border to Italy. And as we see here, we have the plain where Mendrisio is probably quite known for the Accademia dell'Architettura that is there. We have Mendrisio and Chiasso here, and then we have this valley that stretches in like this, and it's the most southern valley of Switzerland. And this valley has 2 municipalities. One is Castel San Pietro, and the other one is Breggia on the other side of the river. And it can be considered a peripheral region in Switzerland because it really goes inside this valley. As you can see here, the hamlet of Monte almost 100 years ago. It's a very small hamlet. We count today more or less 100 inhabitants, so very small reality. And it's a hamlet that is built in an extremely dense way. So house is close to house, there is no in-between space, the alleys are very narrow, and so on. And this is because people back then in Ticino were very, very poor, and therefore they built very narrow so that they could exploit most of the surrounding place for agricultural reasons. So we find that on the slope of the mountain, these terraces, you can see the lines now of the terraces that were built in order to have at least small strips of even ground. And what has changed in the last 100 years in Monte is less that many new buildings came, but it's actually more that the people are not working on survival and agriculture anymore. So what has happened is that the forest completely came or enclosed into the village. And we can see here the reality of Monte looks very picturesque. Kind of these villages on the valleys of the mountains, very surrounded by the forest, very isolated and very connected at the same time, because it's actually not so far away from Mendrisio, but still could be considered a peripheral region. And now that I told you a little bit about the geographical context of the project, I would like to tell you a bit more about how the project came to be. And I'm very sorry for this very boring slide, but it is connected to a reality that is a reality of Ticino. It's a reality of Switzerland, but it's actually a reality of Europe as a whole. And it's the reality of our demographical pyramid going from being a pyramid in the 19th, beginning of the 20th century, where we had a lot of youngsters and few elderly people, slowly coming upside down and becoming an upside down pyramid where we have a lot of elderly people and fewer youngsters. And this is a phenomena that is even more accentuated in the peripheral regions of Switzerland and of Ticino, as young people like me, they leave the peripheral regions to go study somewhere, and then they very often don't come back. And the people that stay are usually the elderly that have grown up there in the village. So long before our project started, there was a research done by a sociological institute that tried to understand how the everyday life of elderly people in these peripheral valleys of Ticino was working. So what obstacles they would meet during the daily life and so on. This was not done only in Valle di Mugio, but in different valleys of whole Ticino. And what came out of this was 10 recommendations of very different nature, so architectonical recommendations, but also of different areas and aspects, going to the municipalities themselves. And Castel San Pietro, who also now recorded, but we have to say it, it's also one of the wealthiest municipalities of Ticino. They decided to take these recommendations and make a project out of it that would not only stay on the paper, but actually would be implemented in the built reality. So they asked us to make a proposal. We didn't yet know if it was going to build or not. At the beginning, it was just like a study and a proposal of how one could make an architectonical project in order to better the quality of life of elderly people. And usually as an architect, you get, when you do a competition, you get a brief. The Mensa needs to have 100 square meters, and this one needs to have, and it's kind of already set, everything. So when you get a brief like, do interventions in the public space in order to better the quality of life for elderly people, we first wanted to know what it's really about, and coming directly from the studies, and we started a little bit to work like students. So what we did is we tried to understand the context in its many different layers. We started with the most obvious one, the physical context. So understanding, okay, what is this public space made of? How are displayed the spaces? What is the materiality? Where can you already sit? How is the different layering of the topography and so on? Inside and outside, in the public spaces inside and outside. We try to understand where are the main public elements and buildings also inside the little valley, the little town of Monte. So you have the shop, you have the former municipality house, you have something that we call the Gra, which is the place that many families came together in order to dry their chestnuts. We have the church, of course, the wash house, and so on. And we tried also to understand what is the materiality and the color of Monte. So we made a survey, this is a very small part of it, of what the surfaces and the materiality of this place is exactly. And in a very, let's say also a bit naive way, we started to map all our discoveries one by one. And then something that is maybe not so direct, we started to ask ourselves, okay, but who are we intervening even for? So in a reality like Monte, where you have 100 inhabitants, you can talk to most of them. So we decided to do something that maybe it's not so typical for architects. We decided to go and talk to people, to understand how they live, to understand how they used to live in the place, how they move in the public space, and so on. And so we started to make walks with the elderly people, but not only the elderly people, with key figures of the social dynamics of Monte. Of course, then it's a reality where you look out of the window who is going in the street, so then people come out and so on, so it gets its own dynamic. And what you see here is a film still of a short, I wouldn't even call it movie, but like a short film that we had done, because we spent 3 months before even starting to plan anything, just trying to understand what we are dealing with. And we were afraid that when we go to the municipality and we show the project, they don't get this, this background work that we have done. So we decided to have a film maker coming with us during the whole process in order to be able to show them, okay, this is the background that actually comes before then understanding what the interventions could be. So we walked around quite a lot with people showing us where to go. And we also went into the houses of people, the ones that of course invited us. And we started to do something that you can see here, but you can see also in many other pictures. We started to ask them if we could have a sneak peek into their family albums. We were less interested, let's say, in the pictures of the wedding of Gennaro and Rosaria, but more about the background of where these pictures were taken. So they were maybe taken in front of the church, so we'd have the people, but you would have also the background of how these spaces would look back then. And this is when we started to get interested not only in the social context, but also in the historical context. We of course went also to official archives, but through these family albums that were opened to us, we were able to find out quite a lot, and it comes up multiple times during the process, the project explanation, that these anecdotes that were told to us were quite important on the shape that then the project took. So the reality of Monte, how it was in different times, you can already discover now here the floor how it was, then they changed it, how people were gathering in the public space, and different historical moments also taking place in this very small reality of Monte. The wash house, how it was in 1925 with the small Madonna that is still there today, somehow watching over usually women washing the clothes and so on. And after these 3 months, where we didn't draw a line except for the things that we discovered, we found out for ourselves that it was less about doing one project in one place, rather than trying to activate different potential that we found around the territory of Monte. And this potential could be of very different kinds. So it could be social potential, could be a landscape potential, could be an economical potential, of very, very different kinds. And we came up with a project that would have several different moments of intervention that is then bound together by one fil rouge that ties them all together. And what I would like to do now is take you on a walk through Monte and through the 7 interventions that we have planned. Actually, as Håkon was saying in the introduction, and what this plan is also saying, that if you don't know, sometimes you don't even notice the intervention because it blends in quite well with the rest of the village. So we start at the church square. The church square, very beautiful, only flat place in Monte. Very picturesque also, but a place that doesn't invite at all to stay. There is no place to sit, there is no place to rest, there is no place to not just cross by. The children were forbidden to play football and use the church entrance as their goal, so not even that anymore. So it's a very beautiful place, very well maintained, but at the same time, nothing is happening on this church square. So, as I was saying before, when we went through the family pictures, we noticed that on the church square, you see the church facade here in the background. This is actually the same person, just a few years in between. We discovered that there used to be a bench that was perpendicular to the church facade, a bench that was at a place where the people working in the small garden and agricultural field, when they were going home, they would stop to say Rosario, so this to pray the Rosario, I don't know how to say it in English. And of course, people before the Mass and after the Mass would gather on this bench and so on. So we heard quite a lot of anecdotes. Then, and we see it here also in the 70s in the procession. Then in the 90s, this happened. So they took the bench away because they wanted to be able to go through this passage with an electrical small vehicle. And they took the bench away, but we found this picture in which the scar of the bench was still visible on the church facade. So what we decided to do is to propose a bench, of course not in the exact same place because people would get mad at us, but to propose it also not in the middle of the square, but rather on the periphery. And we chose this spot, this is before the intervention, we chose this spot that is well radiated with the sun. It heats up, the facade heats up quite nicely. And it sets itself at the border of the plaza. So you can see it here in many different forms, but it's actually a bench. And it's a bench that at the same time is a fountain, and at the same time it's also a place where children can play. And I show it a bit more now. So it's a place of possibility, let's say. The whole project doesn't aim for imposing something, but it aims for creating possibilities for people to meet, for elderly people to have places that you can steer towards when you go outside the house. It's places that try to speak to different generations at the same time, and also try to speak to locals and tourists equally, because, and you have to know that this valley and Ticino as a whole is also a very touristic place. So you could have this possibility of an elderly person sitting on the bench, a tourist filling up the water bottle at the water outlet, and a child playing at the same time with a stick in the water drainage, and all very concentrated in one place. Something like this. I have three very, very, very short movies, but I'm just, there are cutouts of a longer movie that we have done about the project, of how these interventions are possibly used and a bit abused also, with the water going everywhere. But this is kind of a small glimpse into how this small part of the project could be used. Then also, how do you build something like that? So we have worked with local craftsmen. I cannot say craftswomen because we didn't have any women on the team, but with local craftspeople. And they were used to, doing big walls and kind of these things. So you can imagine the kind of friction of starting to do these small details. At a certain point, we arrived to the building site, and they were doing the fountain bowl with a football, pressing it into the cement. So then we were like, okay, we need to find another solution. So here you can see a little bit of this detailing that goes into a very, very small intervention. And then we move upwards towards the village, and it's the village center. And in this intervention, we really found out how important it is to talk to the people that you intervene in their reality. Because if I would come as an architect to this village, I would think, yes, of course, the village center is the church square. It's the biggest square, it's somehow flat, it's very representative, and so on. During the interviews with some of the inhabitants, they were saying, the village center, the piazza. We're saying, the piazza of the church. No, the piazza is on the main street, where there is these little windings on the left and on the right, where the crossing street comes from the upper part of Monte and goes in the lower part. There is the bus station, there is the village shop. That's our piazza, and not really the piazza of the church. So since we found it like this, really a place of transit, not really characteristic of a piazza, with as I said, the bus station there, the village shop there, and the street coming from the upper side of Monte going down, also here the house of Jonathan Surgison. We decided to make an intervention that would try to give this identity of the piazza to this place of transit. So we started to draw, and we decided to make a change of pavement, also because then cars that drive through somehow feel this entering into the village and entering into something that could be considered more a pedestrian zone than a car zone. The shape comes out of the prolonging of this passage from up to down, giving the village shop that is in here somehow an importance. And then this funny shape somehow came out of it. And you can see it here as it lives and breathes with these very small inserts in the pavement that will become important. They are somehow a translation of an anecdote that we heard from Luciana Tavernelli, this lady, who has lived her whole life in this village, and she's actually the daughter from the guy that you saw before in front of the bench. And she told us that the exact place where you saw these 4 stones placed, there used to be 4 stones in the before it was made out of asphalt, the road. There used to be 4 stones with holes in them, and they were at the exact distance of the poles of the baldaquin that was brought in procession from one village to the other. So they would come with this baldaquin from the upper village, they would put them into the ground, they would somehow bless the village, and then they would go on to the next village. And these stones with the holes in the rest of the year, they were used by children. You can see it here. They were used by children to play with marbles. So marbles are, yes, you all know what marbles are. To play with marbles, and they had kind of a game of you had to somehow get these holes all for yourselves and so on. And we wanted to somehow hold on to this memory that it's not a memory written in a history book, no, it's a memory in the mind of a person or 2 people or 3 people maybe, and that when they will not be anymore, this memory will not be anymore either. So we decided to create these inserts in the pavement. There is also a little plaquette that explains this anecdote. And it's also an important part of the project that there is many hints to things, and if you want to see them, you see them, but if you don't want to see them and you're not interested, they're not forcing you to see them. Construction site pictures. It's also quite interesting when you intervene in a reality like this, where there is one street connecting the whole valley. If you block that one street, you're going to have some problems. And that was the case as well in our intervention. We had to create an alternative street for the time being. Right adjacent to the village center piazza, let's say, there is a village shop. You have to know that in these realities, the village shop is a privilege to still have one. It's usually a concentration of village shop, gathering place, post office, and everything in once. And especially for elderly people, it's a very important place of reference within the urban fabric or the fabric of the village. So what we did here is also, let's say, almost nothing. This is how we found it, with this beautiful conditioner there. When you pass by, the first time we passed by, we didn't even notice that there was a village shop inside, because the window is kind of half obstaculated by this conditioner. The door had matte inserts of glass, so it felt like a private house from outside. So on the facade itself, yes, we took away that, we put it somewhere else. We made a vitrine in order for also the tourists to be able to see that you can get local products inside and so on. But we also noticed that the original door had this bag on it. And this bag is there because the village shop is open only until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And there is the baker coming. This is the baker coming every day, and he makes a round of the whole valley, bringing to every village their bread. And if you work like us all, you're not there at 1 to get your bread, and therefore they put the bread in this bag outside. You could go pick up your bread, and then you pay once a month. It's a very trust-based society. What we decided to do is to create somehow this outdoor furniture to have a little bit of order also outside, and to create this place that is protected from the rain and so on, where you could deposit your bread and go and pick it up. And it's a very, very small detail. It's a furniture design more than architecture, let's say. But at the same time, it was quite important to take this ritual of a whole community quite seriously and try to give it a place and a shape. The inside, this is how we found it. It's made out of 2 different spaces. One space that is made more for selling, and one space that was already dedicated with a small coffee machine to coming together. Not a very cozy space at that moment, so what we did is actually we made an inventory of all the furniture and selling racks and so on that they already had. We tried to make them in a more efficient way in order to give this backspace some more quality and some less feeling that you're sitting in the middle of a supermarket space. But otherwise we almost left it untouched. And as you will see in this project, it's less about projecting and a lot about refraining. So you come there, you find something that maybe aesthetically is not what you would have done, but at the same time it works quite well. So we really tried to work only where we saw a lot of potential to that our intervention would actually change something and not just make it nicer. Okay, some small impressions. The village shop also is the info point somehow for the project, and you can buy the marbles of Monte that will be important in a later point of the presentation. Then we come to the cemetery. The cemetery, maybe for me at least, it's something that is there in the city. It's quite abstract, but during the interviews with the inhabitants, we noticed that elderly people, there's some that go every day to the cemetery, especially when they have lost one of their spouses. And so it's a public space that is quite relevant. And the interior of the cemetery, we thought, yeah, it works quite well already, so let's leave it as it is. But there is this entrance to the cemetery that had a ramp that was double curved somehow. Difficult situation, no place to get water to water your grave plants, so a lot of plastic plants on the graves. And what we decided to do is to make a new entrance path to this to the cemetery, to try to lower a little bit the. I mean, it's not still to norm, that's for sure, but try to make it a little bit smoother, to give the possibility to walk up some stairs. The handrail that comes to get you already at the street. You can see it here in plan. It's a quite intricate way of doing the flooring. And at the same time, we created also, and you can see it here, a fountain that would allow you to get water for the plants of the graveyard without doing extra miles, let's say, to get the water. And you can see it here. And now, talking about the materiality of this fountain, you can see that we used a stone that is quite expressive. And this stone is called marmo d'arzo. And in this detail of 1 square meter, let's say, there is 3 different stones that belong to the area. This is a geological map of the area. And in 1 small square meter, you can start to feel already what somehow the geology of the place is made of. The Marmo d'Arzo it's technically not even a marble, but we call it a marble. And it's extracted 10 kilometers away from Monte. It's a very expressive marble that is used in all the churches of Ticino. All the altars of Ticino are made out of Marmo d'Arzo and has therefore a very ecclesiastic connotation. And I think this stuck somehow in the people's minds, this ecclesiastic connotation. And so nobody would like to use Marmo d'Arzo somehow in their houses or to do with a kitchen counter and so on. And in the time that we did the project, the quarry actually closed down. I have a small videos of the quarries as well. It's a very, very small quarry that is owned by the Patriziato, which is somehow the old families of Arzo owning this quarry. And it's an expressive stone that can go from very red to very gray and green somehow. You can see how the fountain was done. And so we tried to bring back this material. We didn't make it, of course, because the quarry closed in the meantime, but we tried to bring back this material somehow in the minds of people as it not only being something that you can use in a church, but it's something that is very close by. You don't have to import it from China or from Brazil. It's very close by, and you could use it in the public space as well, or even maybe in a project inside your own house. Here you can see some pictures of how it was done. If we move on now, we come to the fountain. You said, okay, we already saw 2 fountains, but this is the fountain that was actually the only water access in the village before the water was brought into the houses. And it used to be back then quite an important social gathering space, because you would go to get water at least once a day and so on, and you would meet people there. And what we found is a bit sad fountain that was broken, and they built this hydraulic house somehow on top of it. They built a car park on the side of it, and this fountain was somehow there, left a little bit to itself. So what we decided to do today, we will maybe do it a bit thinner, this wall, but what we decided to do is to create somehow, to give this fountain a little bit the space of influence back and the ability to breathe a little bit again. We restored the fountain. You can see it here. We changed some of the pavements and so on. And it's a place, because Valle di Muggio is also very loved by bikers, it's a place that actually becomes quite used, not only by the inhabitants, but by the bikers also. I want to tell you a little bit an anecdote that was quite a big lesson for me about this water outlet. Keep it in mind. So here you see the 2 water outlets. So originally we planned this water outlet. Sorry, I have to go a bit further. Look at it, so beautiful. We planned this water outlet. There is water shortage every summer in Valle di Muggio. So we decided to make a water outlet for drinkable water that you have to open and close in order for not to waste too much water. Great, we finished the project, all good. And then we came back, I think it was like a year later, maybe a bit more than a year later, to find, and I show it to you again, the second, like the first water outlet is hidden behind him, the second water outlet. And we were like, okay, what happened? There is even these 2 little drinkable water, non-drinkable water. And we asked around, okay, what happened? And they told us, yeah, now that we have a nice fountain, we would like the water to run all the time. So they decided to make this non-drinkable water outlet in a quite a rough way. And they said, yeah, but you made the water outlet in messing. How do you say messing?
Brass.
Brass. and we also made it in brass. So as a first moment of skepticism, where we were like, but they didn't, and they didn't ask us, and you know, I reflected a little bit on it, and it's quite nice how this fountain was there for decades without being looked at. And then with our project, even though we would have done it maybe in a different way, we got that spark of interest again in the place. So it's less about the aesthetics of this water outlet, but more about the fact that it got back into the consciousness of people that they actually have these spaces. Sorry, now I jumped a little bit back and forth. Of course, studying how the water comes out and the details of it. Can be used in different ways. And here you can see this is a restoration person that did the water fountain. And this is a technique that we used quite a lot in the project, and it's basically just a regular casting of concrete where you put big blocks of stone in it, and then you hammer away the surface in order to get back the surface of the stone. Good. We're going on to the municipal house. So Monte is today not a self-administrated municipality. It's part of a bigger municipality. Like, it's a big reality in Switzerland that small municipalities go together in order to make bigger municipalities. So we have a lot of municipal houses that are very well located inside the fabric of the villages, but they are very often unused. This is not exactly the case of the former municipal house of Monte, where the people of Monte that are actually quite active, they inside made already a kitchen, and they made a big space that you can, I don't know, celebrate or present something or exhibit something and so on. Also there, the kitchen, I would have done it differently myself maybe, but still a working kitchen, so we left it as it is. But we noticed that the outside spaces is still a relic from this trying to be a representative house. And the village fabric, as we saw from the aerial picture, is very extremely dense. So people in Monte, they don't have a balcony or a terrace. Because the adjacent outside space, you have the house and then you have the public space. It's not that you have kind of an in-between buffer zone. So what we decided to do is to try to make up for all the lost outside tables of the terraces of the people of Monte, and make one big table that could fit not the community as a whole, but still a large number of people. We did 2 pergolas on the 2 sides of the door, and one big marmo d'arzo table that would stand somehow as a table for the community. So you have the proximity of the kitchen on the inside that can be used and booked by the whole community, and then the possibility to sit outside in a bigger, in a larger number of people. And here we decided, as you saw the fountain before, where the surface of the fountain was polished, here we decided to leave it in this more raw kind of state of cutting in the edges. But it's a stone that is extremely beautiful when it gets wet, because it changes completely its face, and it gets a lot of power somehow when it's wet. So this could be a possible scenario of meeting outside. You can see the first stains already. There are a lot of pictures that are made just after the finishing of the project, and a lot of pictures that are made 2 years after the finishing of the project, and you can start to see already some patina, let's say in a good way, on the project. These are the working men. So, finish off a little bit our tour. I don't know how I am in time, but it's just how it's going. To finish off the tour, we end up at the wash house, The wash house, we saw it in a historical picture before. And it's back here, you can see it. It's made out of two beautiful bassins from the 17th and 18th century. And it's located a little bit outside of the village of Monte, because Monte is built on the belly of the mountain, secure from the water streams that form the well, I don't know how to say, the little valleys, let's say, on the side of the mountain. And so the wash houses were usually a bit outside where the water streams would be. Also a place of great importance back in the days. Women would spend a lot of time in this ice-cold water washing the clothes. And also it was a great place of exchange. So we were told by the inhabitants that there used to be not only chit-chat about gossip, but also a place where you would exchange on the knowledge of how to treat how to medicate your child, for example, from one mother to another, and so on. And so when the washing machine came into the houses of people, this knowledge exchange, of course, stopped or transferred to somewhere else, maybe. But also, these wash houses became completely obsolete. And what we found is a place in the woods that is actually quite nice because in summer it can get really hot in Ticino, so it's a place that has maybe 2 degrees less, which are very welcome. And these beautiful water pipe from the 90s, that is this half concrete water pipe put in the middle of the space. Here you can see it in its original state. You have one basin here, and then it goes into the second basin, and that has usually one clear water and then one water with where they would have kind of a soap. What we try to reactivate, of course, the wash house will not become a wash house again, but it could become a place of play, a place of leisure, a place where you can go with your family in a summer day to have a barbecue. We rethought the pavement of the place. And always in the process of the project, we try to imagine what scenarios could take place there. So it's not imposing scenarios, but it helped us a lot to try to understand how the different things could be used. So of course you have the table, that is in this case not made out of marmo d'arzo, as it is not somehow in the village center, but rather outside. So it's made out of a peccia. And then you have this little water stream coming down that collects the water that comes out of the second basin. And it's clearly inspired by the canal that connects the first basin and the second basin. So we just prolonged somehow this water play that was already existing outside. So now, after going through our 7 interventions, I promised you that there is a fil rouge somehow tying the whole project together. And the fil rouge is made out of actually 3 elements. I'm going to present only 2, but I'm going to tell you what the third is. The third, one of the elements that ties it all together are these small, it's not posters, it's made out of metal, but it's explanation points that somehow tell you the anecdotes that we found out in the places that they actually took place. The second one are the benches, because one of the concerns of the municipality, but also integrated in the recommendation of the sociological study, was that it's important that people, especially elderly people, can find places of rest along the way that they do inside the village. And we were like, yeah, okay, but there is every single house has a bench outside. So they are a very beautiful phenomena of a private object standing on public ground. So when we called the municipality and asked them, are they public or are they private? They are like, yeah, we don't know. Actually, they're public because they stand on public ground, but they're private because they somehow belong also to a direct house. We started to go around the village and we noticed that some of the benches had something like this on them. So a little wooden plank or a little doormat in order to not sit on the cold stone. And especially for elderly people, this is quite an important thing, that the surface that you sit on is actually also not the coldest surface. So what we decided to do is not necessarily to make new benches, even though we made some, but to use the already existing benches, not the ones that were right in front of the doors, but maybe a little bit aside, and to create these, in a bad way, let's say parasite, but these add-ons to the benches that are non-invasive, so you can unscrew them. They're pressed screwed, so you can unscrew them and take them off again, and the bench is exactly as it was before. But it lifts the seating height just that little bit, that makes it more comfortable to stand up. And at the same time, it gives you the surface, it's wood, that you want to actually sit on. We also, here and there, where we noticed, okay, there is actually quite a big distance between the existing benches, we also introduced a new bench where we needed. And the third fil rouge that brings us from one intervention to the other is the handrail, and it's maybe the most famous intervention of the whole project. Because when we got the assignment from the municipality, I think what they expected us to do is, yeah, they'll do some handrails, some ramps, and we close the chapter there. And of course, the handrail is quite an important feature when you have to walk around a village that is quite uneven, because it's a stone pavement, that it's a broken stone, so it's quite uneven when you walk around. And also, it's a very steep village, so we started to map a way around the project, but around the village, that would be able to bring as many people home as possible from the bus station and from the where you leave your car. So we made this way through Monte, where we inserted handrails, and these handrails are very regular handrails. They may be a bit thinner than others would do them. They are in a very, let's say, holding back in the materiality. But what they have that is quite special is these moments at the beginning and moments at the end. That the handrail becomes I'm going to come back to the moments at the beginning and moment at the end. The handrail becomes not only a place for stability, so that accompanies you home somehow, but through this feature at the beginning and at the end of the handrail that can be unscrewed and screwed back in, and the little hole just placed at the entrance, and the little hole placed at the exit of each handrail, it can become a marble bound. I don't know how to say that. And so you have an element that is in a very pragmatic way serving people that need it to walk around, and at the same time, just with a very small twist, it can become an element that creates a widespread playground all around the village. Small anecdote, Gregory, our metal worker, we could not find one person that was working with brass that was able to weld brass in whole Ticino, and he decided to learn to weld brass in order to make the project with us. So thank you so much. And you can see here that it's an element that, again, tries to speak to different generations at the same time, tries to have more than one function, and it attracts actually not only local children, but a lot of families take a Sunday afternoon trip to Monte in order to play with their children in this little marble track. So, all this to conclude, not too bad, no? To conclude, the project of Monte was the first project we did when we came out of our studies. And I think that you can see it, we didn't count the hours, we counted once what we were paid. Not a good result, let's say, per hour. But it's a project that formed us very, very much as architects, as practitioners, but also as way of approaching a place. It has in it how to create spaces of encounter, that public space is not only anymore a place of mobility, how it has become in the 20th century. This project has informed us on social sustainability, so a fact that yes, you can create a project, yes, you can create it also maybe in very sustainable material, but if the people that actually live with this project and live around this project cannot identify with the project, then you will have a project that is extremely sustainable, but at the same time, it doesn't have a longevity. And we find that projects that people can identify with them, and I'm not saying necessarily you have to do a 100% participatory project, but that is an exchange somehow with the people that will use later your project. That you can create a project people can identify, they will maybe take care of it, maybe they will install a second water outlet in your fountain, but they will start to take care of it, and therefore you ensure somehow the longevity of your project and the relevance somehow that your project can have. And the third aspect that is quite interesting and got crystallized out of this project is the way of working in territorial acupuncture. So the fact that you study quite a wide territory, but then you end up doing only what is actually really, really relevant, or where you see a lot of potential, and it takes much more time to do this than to intervene in a much more, let's say, I don't know how to say it, like rabiat way. And so it condenses all in the potential of public spaces, places of care. Also, Ofreia is very interested, or in the office, very interested in working with the potential of public space. And today I carry on this thing that started with Monte, as well in the practice, as well in the teaching, and since not so long ago also trying to figure out a way to abstract Monte in the approach that it has, so that it could be transported to other realities as an approach, not as a project itself, but as an approach that is maybe relatable to other realities as well. Thank you so much.